Sorry.
That's all right.
So as we're going through this next part here.
I'm noting that we're about 11 minutes into.
Yeah, so I'm over what I had planned on.
Which is fine. I'm just thinking about it. Because I want to provide you feedback, so I'm just reflecting on that, right?
Yep. So the next part here, I'm just going to show you sort of a high-level overview of the software that we're going to use for this company.
Yeah.
So I'll log into it. It's web-based software. I keep it on my favorites here. So I'll log in. And in here, we have multiple projects from multiple clients. And these are all demo projects. So they're not actual real projects right now. I have other ones that I keep separate for the individual clients. But this gives a demonstration of what we can do.
Okay.
And to give you an idea of one of the things that this software we've been able to make it do that others can't do, there are, in the current regulations, there are 13 different essential requirements. And in the long run, they're going to have a total of 23 with the new regulations that are coming in 2020. And for every single one of those requirements, we have sub-requirements. So if you look at this one, this is sub-requirement 0. And you click on this one, sub-requirement 1. But some of these have sub-requirements A through Z. So there are many essential requirements that you have to meet. And some of them cover electrical safety, some of them cover ionized radiation, some of them cover biological risks.
Depends on what the product is.
Yep, and we'll indicate whether they're applicable or not. But these are the essential requirements. And then we have, for each of those, we have user needs that will link with those. We'll have risk that we'll identify, risk controls. We'll also identify how that risk is identified in the user manual for the product. And we'll identify how we're going to track whether it's working once the product goes on the market. So every single thing that we have.
Atlassian makes some, I don't know if you know Atlassian, they make some really good kind of requirements and risk management products too, but I don't know if it applies to your industry.
I haven't heard of them before. How do I spell the name?
Atlassiam.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do know who they are. The company that makes, what is it called?
They make a product called Jira and Bitbucket.
Yeah. Jira is the one I'm most familiar with, and the guys that use this work with Atlassian all the time.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Anyway, so go ahead. I just thought of that and thought you'd want to know about it.
Yeah. I thank you for that. That's very helpful. So every single time a company comes in with a new project, rather than working with Excel spreadsheets and trying to keep it all in an Excel spreadsheet and having it very difficult to show everything we want there, instead, we're going to put it in this database. The other advantage this is going to have for us, other than being easier to hold the data and manage the data and manipulate it than a spreadsheet is, this is a true database, so we can export it in any format we want. We just need to map the database inputs to the output format. And so, therefore, one of the documents that's required for a European submission is called the Essential Requirements Checklist. So a company will go through their spreadsheets and create a new spreadsheet called an Essential Requirement Checklist and fill that all in. And it's usually a 27-page document. And every single time they make a change to one document, they have to make a change to their Essential Requirement Checklist. Well, you make the change once, and you would just print PDF of Essential Requirement Checklist, and you'd be done. And that's just an example of one document. The other documents that they would require you to submit as part of a European submission would be a risk management plan. You'd have to provide a list of hazards. You'd have to identify all the tests that you performed. You'd have to provide a risk summary report. Every single one of these outputs can be a standardized format that you export directly from this software. And you can export it in PDF. You can export it in a Word document. And if you decide at some later date you don't want to use this software and you want to go to a completely paper-based system or put it in another software database, you can export out of here as a standard database file and then do the data mapping from these cells into other cells of another database program. So it's exportable and migratable to another platform. You can export any of the data in any format you want. You just decide what the format needs to be, and you can do it as many times as you want with a click of the button.
So let me understand something. What you guys provide is the services around the risk management, the 510K process, including basically not just, I mean, this is going to sound trite and I don't mean it to, filling in the data.
Yes, I help the company ask the right questions, identify the risks, identify the tests that they need to perform. But for years, I've been helping clients fill in spreadsheets and showing them how to manage the spreadsheets. And it really doesn't work well for them. It's not the right tool for the job. And here we have a tool that does work. The big difference.
One of your value adds, if I could, one of your value adds is to say, hey, listen, we manage all this for you end to end. But instead of doing it spreadsheet style like everybody does, because that's a disaster waiting to happen, we're going to use a tool that's going to make this far more flexible, efficient, and transportable.
Yes. And when I go audit companies or I do a mock FDA inspection, some of the companies have software solutions that'll do this. One of the most common ones out there is called MasterControl. The entry level for MasterControl is $40,000. The entry level for this is $250 a month.
How much do these CEOs that you're talking to care about price?
All of them. They're all startups.
Okay, good. All right. That's fair. That's fair. They're some of them have some funding, but they're not. They're all sensitive to cost.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to convince them not to use spreadsheets, which are essentially free to them, and use a better solution, a database. And they're thinking in their mind, I'm going to spend $40,000 on MasterControl. Why? If they're even familiar with MasterControl.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can hear my former business partner saying, "We're just going to do it in a spreadsheet. Are you out of your mind?"
Yeah,
right.
And
no,
this isn't free. It's $250 a month, but at the same time, it is a productivity tool that's going to allow you to share it with your company, any vendors that you hire to help you with the design and building of the product. It's going to allow you to export the information so you don't pay a consultant or even an employee of your company to create these documents. There might be 3, 4, 5 different documents that have very similar information but presented in a different way.
Well, hold on. So your engagements last what, 6 months?
The shortest is typically 2 months. The longest might be 18. It depends on when I get started on the project and how complex the device is.
Why don't you just wrap the cost of the software into your bill and not even tell them how much it costs?
I can. However, the clients are all worried about confidentiality of their information, and they're not going to want to hire a regulatory person forever. They're going to want to own this and maintain this long term. So this is not just a short-term decision to help them get through FDA approval.
I see.
It's a long-term strategic decision. What do I want to maintain and pay for forever? The $40,000 piece of software that has a 20% maintenance fee.
I see. I mean, one way to handle that would be say, hey, listen, for the term of the engagement, we cover the cost of this. At the conclusion of the engagement, we can either export the data or you can take it over yourself.
And I have done that.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's just something I'm just thinking it through.
Yep. So that in a nutshell is what this does. It makes it easier to create the information that I need and store it and manipulate it. It's a more cost-effective solution, and it was developed by guys that actually have done design projects and are specialists in software development for medical devices, so it meets all the requirements all over the world. Mm-hmm. And it's the only one I've found that's priced for startup companies. I was just doing a presentation earlier today for another competitor of theirs, and I was asking them, well, what is your pricing now? Because I know they had come down on pricing. I was saying, what is your pricing? And the company happens to be Greenlight Guru. And everybody's saying, how does this compare with that?
Browser that you're sharing up there, Greenlight Guru keyword.
Mm-hmm. So I was looking at how much that would cost. And they've come down, but they've come down to $10,000 plus the maintenance fees.
Yeah, I mean, but they're targeting larger companies, right?
No, they're targeting startups. So they are the least expensive solution. What is different between this software and their software is their software can also manage training records, document control, and other things. But for a company that's truly a startup, it's a little bit too pricey.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And what this company, Matrix Medical Requirements, is trying to do is they're actually working with Atlassian, trying to develop a solution that's actually using Jira as the background, trying to keep track of projects and manage training databases and things. So they hope to have a beta version for me to look at in October when I visit them in Amsterdam. But
nice.
For right now, this covers the design and risk, which is what's important up until you get 510K clearance. Once you're on the market, then the other part becomes much more important. But we can work on a paper-based until then, and at that point, you can decide, hey, I really want to convert this over to Greenlight Guru. I have a bigger budget now, or I don't want to go to Greenlight Guru. I'd like to be a beta tester for Matrix Requirements Solution, or, the quality system, we don't have a lot of employees. We're going to stay paper-based for the quality system, and we'll use this only for design and risk management.
So the CEOs that you're talking to, I'm assuming, just knowing startup CEOs, they're generally fairly inquisitive as you go through this discussion.
They are. Often they'll have somebody on their team that is experienced in design that may ask some technical questions. Usually, if it's just the CEO and they're not asking me technical questions, the two questions they care about most are, how much is this going to cost and how long is it going to take? And so the how much is it going to cost is very straightforward. They have no contract requirements. It's $250 a month, and then there's a per user increase. So if you had 5 users, you're looking at a little over $300 a month.
Well, no. So let me ask a different question. So relative to how inquisitive I've been, how inquisitive typically are your initial CEO meetings like this?
Pretty close to about how they are.
Okay. All right. So after you get through this software demonstration and kind of value proposition of using software in general and why this one's good, and obviously the price is attractive, what happens next in your conversation?
Normally, I've already engaged them on the project as a whole, and I'm just trying to convince them to use this as the tool that we're going to document our work instead of spreadsheets.
Okay, I didn't understand that. So,
yep.
So because I was kind of doing this in 3 different. I smelled 3 different buckets here. One was my first thought process was, holy cow! I was trying to put myself into the mindset of a CEO with a product that needed to go through this. And I mean, we've done software products before, but never like a hardware product. So that's as close as I could get from truly understanding the mindset. My first thought was, oh my God, there's no way I would want to hire staff to go through trying to figure out how to do this and then screwing it up 25 times. I'm just going to hire these guys just because this is way too much of a pain in the butt to do it ourselves.
That's how most CEOs think, and that's why I'm very successful with sales with CEOs. They can basically outsource a lot of their design and all of their regulatory and quality needs to my company. The average project for me starts at 10 grand and goes up to 40 grand. I have had some projects that were over 100 grand. This software is selling for 250, 300 a month, depending on how many people are using it. And over the course of a year, that represents a couple days worth of work for me. So rather than working on a commission, which really wouldn't mean much to me, instead, I give them referrals and they give me referrals when it makes sense.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And their company, for every single client they're trying to bring on, they look at the cost of acquisition. The value to them for a customer is maybe $4 grand a year, so they can put several $100s into every customer acquisition and still make good money.
Okay, so a couple things. Have you met with the CEO in person prior to having this discussion?
I would say I only meet face to face with my CEOs that are my customers probably less than 5% of the time. Most of them I close on a virtual call like this.
Okay, and using Zoom or something like this, right?
Zoom or the phone, or sometimes just email. I've closed just email.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so then once you've kind of walked through the software piece here, then what happens?
Usually I already have a proposal to them, and this is just a discussion about what tool are we going to use to document all this work. Do you want to go with spreadsheets, or do you want to use this tool? And if you want to use this tool, we have two options. Option number one, we can demo it for a while, no cost to you, or we can make the decision right now, we're going to use this because that's what I recommend, and most of them trust me and say, go ahead, it's not a lot of dollars, just do it. And in that case, we set up an account just for them and they own it rather than me owning it.
Understood. Okay. And then you say, great, guys, thanks for the call. I appreciate it today. Looking forward to working with you. Let me know when you have the signed statement of work.
I usually already have the signed statement of work before we even talk about the software.
I see. Okay.
And so really the only question that I pose to them is, do you want to demo it? Well, it's three questions. Option one, not interested. Option two, demo it. Option three, buy it.
Got it. Okay.
And you can get rid of it anytime you want. There's no contract. It's entirely up to you. Some people will ask, do I have to pay to validate the software? No, you don't, because the company that developed it, they're validation experts, and because it's a web-based software, the only people that can validate it are the people that host it. Whereas if you bought CDs and you loaded it on your server, then you'd have to validate it. So that's one of the things I recommend to companies is only buy web-based software in medical device, because otherwise you have to pay to validate it, and that costs a pretty penny.
Understood. Okay. All right. So here's my thought process about this. The first one is I want to see you. I mean, it takes up valuable screen real estate, but I really want to see you. I feel like I'm just standing here talking to a computer screen. I really just want to see this person that I've hired to do this.
Okay.
The second one is I don't want to see your browser or your desktop. I want to see just what you need to show me. So you see Evernote and apps and, I mean, basic stuff.
Well, in this one right now, I'm showing the desktop. If I don't want to do that, I can do this, and then you'll only see the screen, and you shouldn't be able to see my browser.
Well, so I still see the browser.
You still see the tabs up top?
Yeah. So basic,
so just close those.
Yeah. And hide your, just like use a different browser. If you used Chrome all the time, then just pick, if you're on Windows, just use your Edge browser for this particular demo or whatever, right? It's Firefox, whatever. And then have everything hidden so that we don't see your tabs along there. Just kind of clean it up in general, right? Not a big deal. Very, very minor. And I might even be willing to, if I were you, let your customer drive a little bit. Like
where you put you in charge of my screen,
correct.
Or I can let you show your screen and you drive, and I can tell you what to do.
Yeah, either way. I mean, if I don't know Zoom that well, but if you could give me control of the screen temporarily, and you say, I'm going to let you drive, I'm going to tell you where to go. So on the top left-hand side corner of the screen, I want you to...
Yeah, so I can give you mouse control right now, and now you have mouse control.
Great. Click to start remote control. What am I supposed to click here? Oh, I'm controlling your... Oh, perfect. All right, so you can say, all right, now go to the top right-hand corner and click Essentials. Okay, now click Spine Ovations. Okay. Great. Now, what I want you to do is look through the requirements. You can just toggle that on the left. Oh, wow. Yeah, I see. Oh, my gosh, this is so much. Particle size. I see. And you can just giving them like only a minute to do this. You say, listen, I don't want to take a lot of time for you to do this, but everybody's seen a spreadsheet, but I just want you to kind of see what this looks like and feels like that we'll be doing. And then, down the road, some of your staff will need to do after we've completed getting through approval. Like,
for instance, there's no way you're going to type all this into a cell of a spreadsheet.
Right. And exactly. And so as I'm going through this and I look at solid particle, you can say, or you can say to me, why don't you click on viscosity there, requirement 3? Okay. Or let me just pick a better one, particle size. Pick on particle size. All right. So you see that in the center, like don't type anything right now, but you can see that particle size, like you're never going to type that onto the spreadsheet. And even if you did, it'd be almost impossible to manage.
Yeah. It would never display properly. It wouldn't print properly.
Yeah, you can see that kind of stuff. Now, and then you say, okay, now why don't you go down to risks? Down there on the bottom left. Yep, down there. That's right. Okay. Well, in this case, we don't have any. We'd have to come up with some. You'd have to,
I need to populate the database or walk them through an example that is more fully populated.
Yeah, so let's go through
Wheelie. The Wheelie example is one that's well populated.
So go to risks. Okay, design phase, production phase risks. Well, this is not a good example. Whatever, you'd figure out a way to walk me through it. You wanted to show me the multi-levels of the requirements and whatnot, right? Just give them 2 minutes to drive during the center of this. So we've been talking for the actual walkthrough was about 25 minutes.
Yep.
Which is not bad. I mean, it's super fast, right? So I would say no more than 15 minutes, no more than 10, 15 minutes into it, let them start driving.
Okay.
Like once you do your, hey, let me just show you this process, like, and you talk about that and you engage them in conversation, right? So we have this mantra, move from presentation to conversation to collaboration.
Yes.
Right. So presenting is fine. Conversing is better. Collaborating on something is even better. So you telling me how to walk through this thing and having me drive is more akin to collaboration. And that's going to be far more impactful than you just kind of walk me through it.
Okay.
Right. So you can present, turn your face on so we can see you. You don't have to do it the whole time, but definitely for a portion of it. Start at the top, start with a conversation. Hey, how are you? It doesn't really matter. The point is not what you talk about. The point is that you're having a conversation. So you're setting the tone of conversation, not presentation.
Okay.
So you get on the call. Hey, how are you? Mike, Braden, Dave, Rob, John, or whoever you got in there. Who you got in the room with you there, Braden? Oh, it's just me today. Oh, awesome. Hey, listen, before we get started, I'm going to show you, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you these 3 things. Is there anything else you want to go? I mean, really what I want to talk about is the software today, but is there anything else you want to talk about? And how's the weather out there in Des Moines? Wherever the hell your people are, right? Just brief conversation. All you're doing, the only thing you're doing by doing that is setting the tone for conversation as opposed to presentation. That's all you're doing in the first 30 seconds of that.
Okay. When Mary is doing her presentation to you, which we'll see how she does, but I'm going to share the recording with her so she gets some feedback as well from my mistakes. She's going to actually have to present this to a client that's in Brazil.
Yep.
And there's not only a bit of a language barrier, even though their English is very good. They also don't really understand a lot about design controls. They're probably a little bit more advanced than you, but not much. And so she's got to prepare for that audience.
So there's two challenges there. There's maybe 2 or 3. One is a language barrier, one is a cultural barrier, and third one is a knowledge barrier, right?
Yes.
So when we look at cultural barriers, where did you say they are?
Brazil.
And are they predominantly men?
Yes. And they were hoping to do a face-to-face, but underestimated how difficult it was going to be doing a face-to-face with a company that has one person in Kansas and the other one in Vermont when they were visiting Florida. So Mary, I think, would benefit a lot from your comment of use the feature of the software where you share. In here, there's a feature to share your video. So we go into new share, and one of the options is to share video, but I don't think I have that on this one because my video camera is unplugged. So
then let me just give you, and I'll tell this to Mary too. If you have a computer desktop with a screen on your computer in front of you, not a laptop, but a desktop where the screen is about eye level.
Yes.
You put the webcam on top of that, that's going to be best. Nobody likes to have a laptop webcam looking up at their chin.
Yes.
It's weird, right? So it's kind of like, when you take a picture of somebody, if you bend way down and you look up at them, it looks weird. Same idea, right? So I'll give this the same thing. So if you take that webcam, if it's, go out to Best Buy and buy a $30 webcam if you don't have one, put it on top of your computer, clip it on top of your monitor, make sure it's about eye level, and then run it from there.
Yep. And I actually have a webcam that's on a boom. And
oh, you told me, that's right. You told me all that.
So I'm all set up with a green screen and everything, but I just don't use it enough because even though I have the bandwidth, I find very seldom do my clients have the bandwidth. But still, even if we did it at the beginning to start the conversation off and so they can see me if they haven't seen me before, I think that's a great suggestion. And I think particularly for this Brazilian client where they missed the opportunity to talk with her face-to-face and really want that, I think that's a great suggestion for Mary.
Yep. And so I would say a couple things about that too. One is that it doesn't necessarily have to be on the entire time, but it does definitely kick things off and definitely close with it too, right? So when you're getting close to complete, and even throughout it, just kind of pop your face back up. Like,
just like with the presentations, I sort of coach her, practice your opening, practice your closing, practice your transitions.
Exactly. Exact same principle.
Yep.
Now, if they do have problems with bandwidth, because video does push more bandwidth, just do it for a minute and turn it off, right? We don't want to risk the flow of the thing to keep the video on the whole time. Now, another thing which is interesting. So I just did a meeting with a client this morning, and they had their computer and their docking station. The computer was closed, and they laughed about it. And I mean, I've heard every single excuse I'm ever going to hear, right? But I left mine on for the entire meeting, and they felt like they were meeting with me. Their dynamic changed. Their method of interaction, the way they conversed with me changed because they could see me gesticulating with my hands. They could see my facial expressions as I kind of like, I don't know. They're like, they would stop and say, well, what do you mean? And because I've been doing this a long time, I can, sense their patterns and rhythms about that. I couldn't see them because they hadn't turned the darn thing on. But so it feels weird on my end to not be able to see you, but they get tremendous value out of being able to be seen. So point made, I'll move on from that, but you get the idea.
Yes.
And then we also talked about driving we talked about cleaning up the screen, right? Because this is kind of like there's very little time online and people get very, very sensitive to flow online. And so the more we can clean up the screens and clean up the transitions between things, which I thought you did very well in terms of transitioning from PowerPoint to Excel to the software, that was totally fine. But the more you can clean up each one of those screens so that they look like full screen PowerPoint, full screen Excel, full screen on your...
I'm trying to remember how to make this go full screen in Excel. I mean, with a browser.
Yeah, you can play with it. It's not a big deal, right?
Yep.
But the point is still the same, which is that make it seem more like a polished show in which everything is ready to roll. And you're not sharing your desktop, you're giving them a show, right? So that's a big change. And then we also talked about topping the conversation, ending and driving as much conversation as possible. And then lastly was giving them a chance to interact with the software so they feel like they're a part of it as opposed to watching you do it.
Okay.
So I'll listen. Mary and I've been trying to find a time. We're working on it. We'll get there.
Okay.
I'm out a bunch next week, and she's on vacation, I think, the following. I can't remember.
Yeah, she has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, but not Thursday and Friday.
Okay. So, so she and I will sort out time, and then we'll go through this. When's the Brazil presentation?
He will probably want that after her vacation.
All right. So I want to make sure I'll email with her and see if we can make sure we can find a time prior to that.
Okay.
And then if she watches this video, hopefully she can kind of prep in advance for
exactly
discussion so that she can even try to have these things. And I can more, as opposed to giving her baseline guidance, give her kind of tweaking guidance.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for running through it.
You're welcome. And your input was very valuable. Thank you.
Anytime. And we can always do it again, and I'd be curious to see kind of how things change as you attempt to adopt some of those rather minor suggestions, but hopefully powerful ones.
Okay. I'll let you know.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'll let you go, but we'll keep in touch, and thank you for agreeing to talk with Mary as well.
Anytime. Happy to do it. All right. Okay. I'll chat with you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.